So it's been about, give or take, 3 weeks since I've started my latest campaign, DMing, of course. And I've gotta say, I've forgotten what a hellhole it is to have to be creative with three people staring down the barrel at you. But hey, that's a great intro to welcome to Setting the Scene, my lovely little podcast where I talk to local DMs and talking internet heads about what it's like to be at creative roundtables and how they survive the idea sorting process. Unfortunately, not all of my guests survive, and such is the case with this fellow over here. He's actually just been dead the entire time. I've actually brought him back with necromancy. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and while you're at it, go ahead and tell people what your favorite type of tabletop game is.
All right. I'm Mario Sack. I've been here. I was here last time. I've been so powerful that my body barely survived the last session. Um, but yeah, I would say probably favorite type of tabletop. Usually fantasy kind of things. Like obviously, like I've said before, I'm into 5e, but I'll play like any kind of like fantasy stuff. That's usually what I go for. I'll play I'll play any tabletop as long as I have fucking people to play with. But yeah, I tend to lean in towards fantasy.
That's the tabletop grind, isn't it? I'll play anything
Yeah,
so long as I can play
yeah.
it.
If somebody's willing to like play with me, yeah, fuck it, I'll DM it too.
I started this like everyone knows who I am, so I'm gonna roll the tape back a little bit on that one. Hey, I'm Zardamus, your local talking internet head, and occasionally I write tabletop systems, I write tabletop campaigns, I run tabletops, and occasionally I just die visibly on the internet in full view of everyone. That's my thing. Uh, I'm pretty much with old Mario Boy here. I'm very much a
Yo yo
fantasy
yo.
lad. I grew up on ye old fantasy games, and sci-fi just never hit the neurons right once I got accustomed.
Hmm.
I mean, occasionally you'll get away with like mecha stuff, of course, because
Yeah.
that's just romance right there. Giant robots is just romance.
Like I like certain sci-fi stuff. I think 40K stuff like that can be pretty cool
40K is like
sometimes.
fantasy adjacent, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's the thing. That's like it's got like fantasy-esque stuff, and that's what pulls me in. It's like when you got a dude, you've come up with an excuse to give a guy a fucking sword, and they're fighting like space wizards and shit. It's like, yeah, fuck it.
I mean, isn't that most sci-fi though? Like, let's be
Yeah.
realistic. The elements are all there. It's just how much you decide to explain your wibbly wobblies and how much you go. It's rolling planes and fireballs. Suck it, nerd.
So here in our setting, we as so people have been so advanced they created armor that stops bullets. So you need swords to that's Dune.
Isn't it great? But the subject for today is going to be something that I think is just a general creative struggle. It's motivation, it's inspiration.
Mm.
It's that stuff that that everybody tries to shove their arm down the drain and scrape through the pipe gunk to find all the time. And sometimes it just doesn't work, and sometimes someone will seem inspired but has actually been working on this for 3 years. It's a tough subject for most creators, regardless of your medium. Uh, Bearing to tabletops, a lot of it for a DM, I want to say, comes down to not just your setting or your NPCs, but your monster choices as well. Sometimes
Mm.
you just have to dig deep in the well. Sometimes the monster manual doesn't cut it, and you have no idea what fits that little crevice you quite want.
Oh, dude, yeah. I've had a recent game that I had something that it's funny. The like current campaign, a lot of the enemies that the players have been facing had been hobgoblins, and there was a while where I was getting worried that it would start to feel really repetitive. And at some point, we're able to switch back. And something with my setting is that they're like magic is not a common thing you're going to encounter. If somebody has magic, that's kind of a big deal. And even like tiny encounters of that is just like, yeah, a guy knows a spell and he's been able to like use this to a lot of his advantage. So he can fucking cast like an illusion spell or something. It's not even like damaging, but he'll fucking use it to trick people into thinking, ah, I'm a big scary dragon. Ooh, fucking you better listen to me kind of shit. So like there's a lot of times where I end up having to get creative with what I can use because it results in being like, yeah, this is a guy. But I mean people are fucking capable. So it's like this thing of there's gonna be dudes that are equal to a fighter that exists or some shit, and they're gonna like be skilled in certain things. So it's like just kind of coming up with stuff like that, trying to figure out how to do that but still make it interesting, still give them like little things here and there. And I know sometimes I can kind of cheat in the sense of I draw a lot of the stuff that I do for my games, so I'll end up just like making shit and just looking at a character design and something fucking speaks to me, and just I start tweaking it and adjusting it, and it's like, yep, this is my concept for a character now. um but
Yeah, it's kind of something I've noticed that there's people who sit down at the table to like, throw some tokens and some figurines on it and roll some dice. And then there are like DMs that begin to really incorporate their personal skill sets into it, whether they can draw,
oh
whether
yeah.
they can play music. There are
Oh
people that
dude.
use computers at the table to kind of produce effects depending on what you're skilled with, and that's when you really start seeing your style as a DM show. In my experience, when you start putting together various elements of your own experience, is where you shine.
And if anything, I feel like that really helps with motivation because it becomes a thing of by having these other pulls that get into it. I know for me, I end up I feel my most productive when I am DMing because there are times where I'll get like art block. But the thing that ends up helping me a lot when I started DMing is since I have other people there at the table, and these are people that I want to please, like it's in the sense of like I want you guys to enjoy yourself, and seeing you guys enjoy yourself makes me happy. It's this thing of if I do have like a thing where it's like, this session didn't feel on par or like feel like good to other stuff that I've done, it makes me want to like stride for next session. I'm going to get them with something. And that kind of starts to evoke ideas in my head. And sometimes that becomes a thing of like, oh, I have this concept of something. I'm gonna sketch this thing out. I'm gonna do this shit. I'm gonna make a map. I'm gonna do all this fucking stuff. And that gets like the gears going for me, and I feel like in a weird way incorporating some of that stuff can really boost one thing while also boosting the other. So it's like the D&D ends up inspiring me to work on art, and the art ends up like going back into the game. It like has like this effect on the players or something, or somebody like really ends up liking it, and then it like just fuels more to the fucking fire.
That definitely sounds very much like you kind of tuning your own fire with your own work. You've got your fingers in enough pies that that kind of works for you. It very much seems like a style you excel at. I
Yeah, yeah.
am an untalented slag, and I have to steal, connive, and cheat to get anywhere in life. Uh, so the follow up question to that is going to be: do you regularly find yourself seeking outside inspiration or motivation? How often do you just go do things explicitly for the purpose of hoping something lights a little spark in your brain for the next session?
It depends on the situation because I think I have developed a odd habit of uh I don't think I do it on purpose. There have been times where I tried to force it and that never really works, but it's like a thing of sometimes I'll go on like a long walk or something and I'll just have a video of whatever put on the background. Sometimes I'll have like there's a YouTube channel that I really like of this dude called AJ Pickett. He talks about D&D lore, and I'll put on like a random video of his, and they're like hour long kind of things where he goes on a deep dive on a monster. And sometimes that'll evoke something in me. But I think some of the best kind of inspiration that you'll get is when it's something completely unrelated to what you're fucking listening to or like looking at. So it'll be I don't know, I'll look up some random history stuff from like I think I like was listening to some fucking video talk about how stuff was done in Rome or something like that, or like the daily life of a soldier, or there was this long I know one that caused like a lot of inspiration for me was there's this dude called Lindy Beige. Um, and he had like this gladiator video, and I remember I was running a campaign when I listened to the entirety of that because it was a big fucking video, and I was like, "Oh my god, I want to do like gladiator shit in my game."
I think you talked about that a
um,
little bit too. I think that that sounded like it went well.
yeah, yeah, like there was a that is a little bit of some of where that came from. But there's like weird ripples of old because something that has been nice, especially for like my D&D games, is I've had a lot of games that sucked, and they sucked for different reasons. Where it's like either I wasn't good enough as a DM, or the players that I was playing with just did not end up working out, and the game fell apart. But something that has come with that is I've gotten a lot of experience, and I will have these same ideas that I thought were really cool. Like I really wanted to use these ideas. I end up recycling them, but using them in a new way. So it's like, okay, I want to use blank. I made a whole new map. I have like these characters who, whenever I have players make characters, I give a lot of a fuck about their input on what they want to be like what their effect on the world is. So like if they come from a place that's somewhere different on the map, I kind of want to get some of their take of like what do you think this place is like, and I'll like fill in the gaps. And because I have that outside influence constantly coming in, it becomes this thing where I bring up old ideas, but I find new ways to weave them into the narrative. And it's something where because I've done that a ton, I feel more comfortable with these ideas, but they still feel fresh. Like they're like a new concept. They're nowhere near the same as the first time that I used them. Where it's like there I've talked to you about the character Ezekiel, who for the viewers out there, um, he was some hobgoblin like half dragon dude that was leading an army. I got the concept of him out of I stole it from some old module called Red Hand of Doom. The guy was called Azar Cool, and I used him in a game once, and he was a huge combat encounter that really stuck with the players. They were like, "That was fucking cool," and my way of playing him was just like he was like my idea of him was just like, oh, he's cool, like tough guy, and then I ended up recycling the concept for a player character like later on. I really ended up enjoying that player, or I ended up enjoying that like PC character, and eventually I dropped out of that game, and I brought that into my game, not like a DM PC kind of thing, but more like this is going to be an enemy. This guy was an interesting concept, And since I had like this new evolution to this character and they're like completely different from the first thing, there's like a lot more that was added to that and a lot more that shifted with that. And yeah, it's a weird thing where I know there's a lot of people that don't like to recycle those kind of things because it's like, no, that was already done. But I find it exciting to have that challenge of how can I do this again, make it different? Like, how do I actually make this good?
Yeah, like taking a second shot at things isn't like an uncommon idea for people. Everybody has that
Yeah,
thought, you
yeah,
know, I could have done that so much better if I just did X, Y, and Z, or if I had another shot at that, I'd ace that. So I think that's a pretty
yeah,
familiar sensation. I think people are pretty hesitant to do it, strangely hesitant to do it in a lot of creative endeavors. They don't want to take a
mhm,
second pass at stuff they've already done. And I kind of get it in the sense that it feels like you could very easily find yourself walking in circles instead of actually progressing, right? But at the
yeah,
same time, there's nothing wrong with slowly tweaking something you've done into something else that turns it into another form of progression in itself.
it becomes new. Yeah, exactly.
And I get that because that is essentially the foundation of my current campaign. I'm running a Final Fantasy tabletop campaign for those who don't know, in a Final Fantasy uh, homage-inspired system that I've written myself. I'm still working the kinks out of it. Mario's done a little bit of testing on it, but
Yeah, yeah.
the campaign itself was a setting I wrote over a decade ago, pretty much at this point.
Oh man.
And it's just been tweaked and added on, tweaked and added on a little bit by a little bit over the years. And so I ran it the first time maybe half a decade ago, and it got around. I wrote, I think, 6 arcs of story, of major story arcs for the campaign. We got through maybe arc 1 before I was fed up with the system that I was using back then, which I hadn't written. And I was like, let me put this on hold. I'm gonna do some tweaks. I'm gonna make this workable, and we'll come back. And it's been half a decade, so I got most of the players back from that, thankfully. Actually, I'm really pleased about being able to see the old faces. One of them chose to reprise the character that they played last time. One of them made a new character. One of them is still somewhere in limbo, but I'm working with them. They're not quite in the game yet due to life stuff, but I want to hold the slot for them. And at the same time, I wanted to run the campaign that I had brewed up all that time ago. The campaign that was pretty much ready to run in my eyes, but I'd spent so much time tweaking it over the years, and I got to the moment of truth where it's like I got to pull these players together, and I realized I didn't want to run the same campaign that I'd run, but I had all of these elements, and because they were just elements, because they weren't they were in a strict story, but I could pull these elements out. I could rework them with a new frame of mind. And the game that I'm running now is, I can see the obvious parallels to what I was doing back then in the terms of the
Oh,
story, in terms of the setting, but it feels so much different. And I think that's exciting for me in kind of a weird way.
yeah. Like, there's something that I got that's really cool as well in my current campaign is so something that I can see with that's probably that might be cool to your players as well, being like originally it was a thing of they did this before and now you guys are doing it again, but it's different. There's something that can probably be appreciated in the fact of I kind of like I remember this, but I see what you did here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that in my game where I brought back Ezekiel as a villain, and there was a cool like there was a very tense kind of build up to a fight. I utilized everything that I could. I had like special artwork that I did of him, and I had like I had edited some music to fit with the scene. I remember like this threatening like I had like this threatening Bowser's Fury OST thing, and I had like rain filtered over it because it was raining in the game, and this guy did like lightning damage and shit, and that all played in. But there was this point where the coolest thing that happened with it was one of my players was in the original game, that not like the first one, but the game where I played Ezekiel as a player character, and he was basically remaking the same cleric that he was playing in that game, but he put him in my setting. And clerics function very differently in my setting than how they did in the previous game, where since magic is not like a very like often used thing, this guy's kind of a big deal. He's like known as like one of the 6 clerics in the fucking region. So
Cure Light Wound's
this guy,
probably an important thing to have around.
oh yeah, and there was this cool moment of the characters interacting, where, from the player's perspective, he knows who this character is, and these characters have interacted before, but he was able to like there was no like mention of like, huh, in another life we could have been friends or something like that. It was more like a thing that wasn't until after the fact, but it was more in a sense where it made sense, where it was like this dude was a very zealous, not the cleric, the Ezekiel, he's a very zealous like guy who was basically fueled by his goddess's will to move in and attack these like human people with like this goblinoid army. And he had like this charisma, he had like this big presence about him, and it was this thing where they tried talking. Eventually the players are like, fuck, talking isn't going to work, at least we're going to get the first hit in, combat starts, everything goes. And there was just fun dialogue between it was more of like, you are a man of fucking you're a man of God as well. Like they had like ground to stand on, and in the end, when they do like end up killing him, he gives him like a nice burial and stuff, because it was like, maybe if shit was different, we could have been like, yeah, I could have respected you, or I could have like had like some like other shit go on. But there, to the player, I remember afterwards him just talking up like, it feels so cool to have like this different take on the characters. Like it's like it's the same but different, but it's still like very fresh, and that was a thing that just I remember them really enjoying, was just in a way you get a layup on this concept, because the original things kind of went to the wayside of how we kind of wanted them to go, and this was kind of a second chance of like, okay, this is actually more what I wanted to lean into.
Run back can be definitely a thing for the players. Like being able to get a second chance at an interaction is something that doesn't happen in life, so it's perfect for tabletop mediums. It's perfect for telling a story. Plus, like, there's a reason callbacks and homages and parodies are so popular, right?
Oh yeah.
I think one of the NPCs that did that for me this campaign. I've had two that have come back that the players have known. I haven't gotten any big reactions out of them. The campaign, I feel like, didn't. It wasn't like a months. Well, it was like a months long affair. I think it was a couple months long, maybe half a year or something like that. Half a year does not feel long at tabletop time. Uh, but I brought back the headmaster. Uh, the original setting. Basically the entire setting is super Final Fantasy inspired. It's basically a love letter to the original like 10 or so Final Fantasies. And I wanted to start off with Final Fantasy VIII. I wanted to start them off in kind of a here's an adventuring school thing, and this is the headmaster, and he probably does weird stuff in the background. We don't really talk about it. So I got to bring him back, and that felt interesting because he's definitely not portrayed the same way. Because while in the original setting, this was like an already established adventure school that had big name, all that jazz. This time, it's actually sort of a small guild house that is supposed to house and inform and provide jobs for people who go out and explore the wilds. And they are just establishing this. So then rather than having a foundation where the players can go in and feel comfortable and safe. This is we're raw in the wilds. You got to help put up the walls. We're all in this together, buddy, kind of feel. So
Mhm.
I got to bring the headmaster back in a capacity where he's still kind of running things, but it's a lot more ramshackle, and I'm not sure if that made it feel more or less familiar. Like they definitely recognized the name. The moment I dropped the name, it was like you kind of hear that little hum of recognition. It wasn't, oh, it's that guy. I was like, but
Yeah, 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 exactly.
I got to bring back the headmaster, and I got to bring back the merchant he's associated with. Good old Crazy Hassan from the ever famous Tales. I brought an adaptation, but he also got a change. I gave Crazy Hassan a daughter, and I've started
Oh.
playing around with that. And there was already some intrigue the moment the daughter was introduced. Hassan hasn't had his moment just yet, but it'll be soon. As a merchant, I definitely want him to, have the personality, the impact that comes with being a guy that sells you things named Crazy Hassan at Crazy Hassan's Camel Emporium. But he hasn't had his moment yet. But the moment I brought that shop name up and then hit them with the daughter, that was a fun little twist.
Yeah. And like just adding the small things is just I don't know. There's because obviously with tabletop stuff, you never there's a lot of times where in the moment as the DM, you will have this like stuff will just start clicking and you'll just start coming up with shit on the fly and a character can change drastically from like what you initially had in your head. Um so like just tiny little changes can definitely add a lot. Like I can definitely see something like I don't know, the relationship with the daughter, like I'm sure will have like big influence on how you might have Hassan act or portray themselves in front of the group and stuff.
Um, it's hard to say because originally
Hmm.
Crazy Hassan in the first campaign was kind of portrayed as this sort of he was fevered about camels, but also he seemed to like have some awareness of reality. He seemed to like know things. It was that crazy guy that might be having lucid moments, but you're not 100% sure, right?
Mhm.
And that made him fine as a merchant. He camel stuff. People back in the original campaign, one of the players actually got really fascinated with the camels to the point where like they were trying to use camels as their mount instead of like the setting normal chocobos, and
Yeah, yeah.
that was wild for a bit. But this time around, Hassan's definitely going to have more of a story to him because at some point I'm going to have to probably explain how this absolute lunatic who is desert adjacent, raising camels in grassy, hilly plains, had a daughter. Like, who would have a child with this man?
Yeah, that's what I was about
How did
to
that
say.
happen? And furthermore, how is she so frighteningly normalish? Like
Mhm.
Hasabi, his daughter, is portrayed as very business savvy, very sharp. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to get them thinking, what is Crazy Hassan? Is he actually crazy? Is this just a name? Was he formerly sane? I wanted to put
Yeah.
a little extra story slip in there, and I feel like that definitely took a swing at the players that knew Crazy Hassan. I kind of like
Well,
where it's going.
that adds like weird depth to the character, or it's like you start asking questions, like because it's one thing of just like, huh, who is this guy, and like you get like a little bit more information, and it just brings more questions of like, yo, actually, who is this guy? Like, what? How the fuck? You have a daughter?
Who?
Like
Why?
it's like,
How?
who? Like who did that happen with? Okay.
Why did that happen? But
Just
yeah.
picturing this thing too, where it's just like they just assume, or they just like act like, oh, dad. It's like, oh, he's quirky.
This is simply normal for father. Do not worry. And meanwhile, he's in the back screaming on a stepladder, rubbing down
Oh!
this camel's neck furiously. But yeah, well, that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
I had
Mhm.
yeah, like I guess in line with motivation, uh, which is our topic right here.
What? We had a
I
topic?
Yeah, right. I kind of like veered off, but I guess in a weird sense, I was feeling like not super motivated for my last game because we had a 2 week period in between because something had come up that stopped me from playing, like having to skip out on a week, and we just fast forward 2 weeks from there, and it's like, oh fuck, I gotta do this game. And since I wasn't running off of the fumes of the last game, I felt really out of my element. I had to kind of like dip back into that DM mindset. And
Yeah, there's definitely a momentum when you're in the chair.
yeah, and like I had kind of scrambled because I ended up making some character concepts. Not even like character concepts. I ended up like just finding some images that kind of evoked something. I have some slight motivation of just like, okay, well, I established prior that there is a bounty that is out on one of the characters. People are looking for that. That's going to be like an issue that I want them to like probably get taken care of, is finding out like who the fuck caused this, and like can we get them to like stop this. Um and it was just this thing of like, okay, I have some encounter ideas. I want to basically, first encounter is like some guild that is going out trying to get this like trying to get this fucking bounty on this dude. They're gonna send in a small group at first. Once they're done with the small group, they're gonna head outside and they're gonna get like jumped by like a bigger group, and that'll be like my two encounters for the day. And that'll be fun. Like that'll be cool combat and stuff. But what happened was I started like thinking like, shit, how should I introduce these guys? And it turned into this thing where on the fly I was able to come up with a fun scenario where it's like a little bit before the session I was thinking, okay, well, how do they know where to find them? They were frequenting at this bar, or this tavern. A guy's gonna basically be sitting there, and he's gonna like be on the lookout. His boys are outside in case anything happens. And I had like this setup of the players just got back from dealing with some goblin stuff that was happening. They're regarded as heroes. A bunch of people are like giving them praises. And even I was like, actually, right now that I'm thinking about this, now that an NPC just praised them, this is my perfect in. There's just this moment where this guy, he's this big fucking dude. He looks at them as they enter the tavern, and probably like in character wise as well, it has the same realization kind of moment where it's just like, I know you. And the players are like, oh, fuck. This must be a guy after the bounty. Dude stands up. I describe him as being fucking huge. He's like big as fuck, just lumbering over. And he's like, yeah, you're one of those anchor point heroes. And like, they're like, oh, yeah, I am. And he's like, dude, wow, thank you, man. Like, I've heard so much about you. Stories have been circulating around. I didn't really think you were real, like, because he's a Dragonborn dude, and there's like Dragonborn aren't part of this continent. And it's like these ideas start sparking in my head of like this little road, not like road, but like these little blips that I've set out for myself, and I'm kind of like getting in that mindset of the character, and I'm kind of just shaking that DM rust off of me.
Hmm.
And it became this thing where I ended up making this dude kind of likable, which wasn't my intent. And I had like this great like moment where he asks him, "Hey, can I shake your hand, dude?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure thing." And he goes for the handshake. I tell him, "Give me a dexterity save." And the guy's like, "Wait, what?" And he ends up saving. He sees the dude had his hand kind of like cocked to the side. He notices that he has placed part of a handcuff on his own wrist, and the other one is open as he's like trying to swing in for like as he's shaking his hand, he tries to fucking cuff him, and he's able to slip out because this is like a tavern that they've been friendly in, and this dude seems friendly enough. The guy says, "How about we step outside and we don't ruin this place?" And the dude, sure enough, he's like able to convince him. He looks at the other patrons and he's just like, "Yeah, sorry for the commotion, guys. Well, we're just gonna handle this out here." And they like go out. His boys jump out. They have like a quick scuffle. They end up knocking the dude out, which they almost killed him. But one of the other players is like, don't fucking kill him. Hold on." And they end up just using the cuffs on him, and they cuff him. And they're like, "All right, give us what info you can." And I think about it, and I'm just like it was like I didn't give myself a ton of time to think. It's not like one of those things of like, give me 5 minutes to think about this. It was more like, you know, in the DM seat, you're fucking going hot. You want to go like fucking quick. So this guy just spills. He spills a lot of information just based off the fact of like, I don't want to die. You're clearly not gonna kill me, at least I hope. And my associates here are just kind of like sitting at a nearby table watching all this shit go on. So I'm part of a guild. Some of our boys are waiting outside to jump you. How about you let us go? I'll give you some more information, let you know whatever. And shit, don't kill us. That's all.
Making
And
executive decisions.
we have made an executive decision. We do not want to die. Uh, yeah. So like they give them the information, and it turns into this thing as I get more into the feel of this character. They have like a good like they spend a good like real life 30 minutes talking to this dude, getting whatever they can out of him, but the guy just has this charisma about him where he's just like chatting it up with them. Eventually they uncuff him. He's about to walk away with his group, and someone says like one thing of like, "How'd you find us in the first place?" And that's like a quick moment. His head swivels around and he's like, "Well," and he like sits back down and he's like, "I have a story for you. So we've been hunting your ass for like about a couple weeks now." And he goes on to like this whole thing, and he's like starts connecting the dots from previous sessions and stuff. And it was great. It was, I think, the main thing that got me to go forward with that was knowing my players and knowing how to spark certain stuff in them, because it was just this thing of like I was stuck thinking, fuck, what do I do this session? I barely have anything. And it was this thing of just like, this guy is going to try to be your best friend, and I know how he can do that. And it's just like he just talks you up, he makes you feel good, suddenly flips the tables on you. You guys ended up deciding to not kill him, which is a little rare for this group. So it was like a thing of like, oh, he did a good job of being their friend. And then I just focused more in on that, where it's like, you know what? This guy is charismatic. He's likable. He's gonna give you what you need. He's not gonna cause much trouble, and he just wants to get the fuck out of here.
An
um,
understandable life motivation
yeah,
around the party.
and that was great because even on top of that, that means they missed an encounter because what happened was I had like this bigger encounter that was outside. He told them about it, and they're like, fuck, let's take a detour off the road. We're going to go this direction instead. And we're going to avoid that. And that way we don't encounter these dudes. And I was okay with that because it turned into this thing of like, okay, you guys chatted this guy up. It took up a lot of the session, but it was like a lot of the session. It wasn't like just like, oh yeah, I just had this NPC talk. The players were enjoying themselves. And it also like kind of introduced a new NPC that I hope to eventually introduce again. Like literally it was this thing where as he's leaving, he's like, I'll see you guys later. And he goes, actually, I don't want to do that again. It's probably the best that we don't see each other again. Goodbye. And he just like fucking leaves. And it's this thing of, oh man, I can't wait to bring this dude back. They know his name, they know what he looks like, they like him.
Just imagine the despair on his face as he sees them walk
It's
into
like
the next bar. He's like, "Oh, fuck, not
they show back up.
again."
It's like that thing where this dude would probably just be like leaning against something, big smile, and he's like, "Well, shit. Hey, didn't expect you to be here.
Why are you here?
Correct? Yeah, why the fuck are you here? Like, is there some issue? Should I get the fuck out of here? Something happening?"
You gotta love the NPCs that see the party and treat it as like a tornado warning or something.
It's like, oh shit, hey, it's
I gotta pack up and go, but it was great seeing you.
well, that's like an important thing that I feel to have in place for a lot of D&D games is having the setting and just general stuff feel like it reacts, or is like having, for example, um the players are now getting nicknames. Some like sounded funny, but it made a lot of sense in the sense of cleric in the party. He's a death cleric, like class wise, but he is associated with a goddess that is associated with death. And they're also associated, like, there's two gods that are being worshipped in the current area that they're in. And it's like a sun and moon god. Moon goddess is associated with like femininity and like various kind of things, but also like death and like the end of things. But in that same connection to death, a lot of these priests are kind of avoided just because it feels like a icky kind of like taboo topic to the general populace, and they don't want to like focus on that. But because of being a death cleric, he has weird like abilities. And when he was fighting in this big like battle during these goblinoids like raiding this place or like charging into this place, something that he used was a vampiric touch. And the way that we described it was he would basically get these weird like spectral kind of clawed hands, and he would literally siphon the life out of somebody. And when he killed someone with it, it's like he would literally like grab their head with this spectral hand, and you would physically see the soul of this person leave their body and enter him as he like gains hit points from attacking him with it. And
Thanks,
it has
son.
now earned, yeah, it has earned him the nickname because the guy's name is Jeff. that is the player
You
character name.
gotta avoid the easy joke there. I really gotta.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's- the guy's name's Jeff, and he has now been known as the Death Grip Cleric.
Oh no. Oh
and
no.
and some people used it as like a point of endearment, where it's like a thing of when they were coming in and people are like having this moment of like, whoa, it's these people. Like they came up with the term. The place that they were defending was called Anchor Point, so they started calling them the Anchor Point Heroes. And they that was like a term that somebody in a crowd just said. They were like, "Wow, it's the Death Grip Cleric!" or some shit. And it's like he's like, "Huh?" And
Wait, that? You picked that out of
that's what
everything?
you're going
That?
with? Why?
You
What did
can
I do?
you can mortally wound someone with a bad hero name. You just don't
Oh,
recover from
dude,
that.
it's well, it's like because that's the fun shit is like having like really thinking. Okay, you probably have not seen this firsthand, but you have heard some stories. And the stories so far have been there is a witch woman that is traveling with the cleric, like one of the six well-known clerics. So like people when they see him, he has already enough of a reputation of like, oh, this guy must be so and so by the way that he dresses. Like this guy wears a mask that covers his face. He has a big symbol of the goddess on the mask. He wears this like he's draped in this like dark bluish cloak. Um, and he's traveling with an entourage of this witch woman and a lizard creature, which is also on top of like another lizard creature where he has like a guard drake mount. And it's like this thing of to everybody else it's just like what the fuck, these are a very distinct group of individuals, so when you see them traveling together it's like these are who these people are, and their reputation has shifted so much in all the shit that they've been doing, where it's like they're growing more and more like in people's minds, where even the enemy have had like moments where it's like we had a player that would also do psychic damage stuff. And when one of the dudes from the enemy side suddenly got hit with psychic damage, the guy like grabs his head. He goes, "Oh my god, my head hurts." And he has like this moment where he looks at his companions and they all look at each other and he goes, "Oh my god, my head, that's him." So it's like this weird thing of like, "Oh fuck, these are the people we're dealing with. Oh shit." And that helps like really evoke a lot of shit. That helps like really, I don't know, for me at least, like it really starts to set an encounter in place where it's just like I have a feel of the crowd, I have a feel of the people, like keep in mind these things and how they might react to them, and this helps like not only have like cool moments where it can inflate their ego and just be like, you know what, maybe we are heroes, but also have these like it keeps in mind the bad that happens with being so well known, because not everybody likes you.
Yeah,
um,
and honestly, it's like it's one of the reasons that I've become an advocate of not over planning your setting, because
yeah,
the participants in your setting, if it is a live setting, if it is something that's going to be viewed and interpreted through other eyes, they themselves can become an excellent source of motivation as a creator, and you
yes,
want to leave yourself design room both in the moment and going forward.
very much agreed. I actually had something fun happen to me last night where the area where one of my friends is her character comes from, since I tend to take a point of also not over planning and putting too much stuff on myself, there is an area that we've been kind of vague on all the general history and thoughts and stuff about like what goes on there. We just kind of know that it exists. And there's been times where she has had input during the game where they'll just be like, well, I think something like this might have happened. And I'm like, okay, that works. And we had a moment last night where they decided, okay, can we like flesh this place out and figure out like what's here so that I feel like more like I know this place more and have like a solid feel on this. And we started to, and there was a point where as I started giving them information of things that I had in mind, I kind of threw them off because I feel like they probably have never gotten this with the DM before. But I was like, okay, here's what I have in mind. And I told her, what do you think? And she's like, what do you mean, what do I think? And I was like, well, like, do you like this? Do you like this stuff? Because this is, I can change it. And they're like, well, I mean, it's your setting. And I was like, yes, but this is your home. This is where your character is from. This shit kind of matters. Like, I don't want to have like this new concept thrusted on you that you have to like think about. And like, what if you don't like this idea or something? Like now it's like this kind of does affect your character in a weird way.
Yeah,
Where it's like,
this is your background. It may be my piece of
yeah,
writing, but you're going to have more dominion over this because it directly involves you. I control everything else about the game. I can make
mhm,
anything work, but if you're not comfortable with this, it's not going to play out.
exactly. And I think it took them like a good second to like realize what I meant by that. And we kind of got a bit more serious and we put a lot more groundwork and ideas on what was being established. And it was this thing where I gave them an idea and they were like, "Oh, okay. I mean, that can work." But I kind of pictured this like working like this when you first said that. And like I mean, your idea works fine too. And I was like, "Actually, you know what? I like what you said a lot more. Let's go with that instead." And they're like, "Well, you don't have to change everything for just me." And I was like, "No, that's fucking this is the point of this."
That's how this is
um
supposed to go. What do you mean?
yeah, yeah, this is like and that's like utilizing your players to and it's not even just like a because I know I've joked about that before where it's like I'm gonna use my players to make the work to do the work for me, but it's honestly like a thing of by doing that you end up making stuff that they really feel a part of and they start to have investment into this thing like it grows into believing in this setting because you helped make it.
It's a group storytelling endeavor every time.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good place to wrap up. There's lots of places to get motivation, and you just really have to look for them, even in the really obvious places that are right next to you the whole time.
Yeah. The players they're like it's just sucking that motivation will come from like seeing your players like enjoy this or at least that's what happens to me is like seeing my players enjoy certain stuff it's like yeah that's where we're fucking going okay yes let's go.
Mm-hmm. But it's been a good round time here. I think we've got a good, I want to say, handful of cards on what you can pull for, if you're feeling a little bit dry in the well of inspiration here.
Hmm.
But that's about all we'll have for this time. Mario, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on Twitch at Mario Sack and on Twitter at Mario underscore Sack.
And those links will be in the description as always. You can find me on Twitch, on Twitter, on Discord, on YouTube, on Patreon, all that good stuff. And if you'd like to support the show, the best way to do it is primarily Patreon. So take a look at the links in the description, see if you like anything, hang around for a while, and we'll see you next time.